So what does it actually mean to be alive? I mean, we often think about it in, pretty simple terms, right? Breathing, eating.
Reproducing the basics.
Exactly. But what if the core of life, things like evolution, even our own free will, what if they're way more tangled up and complex than we usually think? In this deep dive, we're going to explore some really fascinating ideas from, a remarkable book. It gathers insights from top scientists, all thinking about this concept of life. Our goal here is to unpack 3, let's say, mind-bending scientific concepts that should really deepen how you understand life, evolution, and your environment.
It's a great framework.
Yeah, think of it like climbing some stairs. First, we'll look at how living things interact with each other.
Yeah, okay.
Then we'll widen the view a bit, look at the relationship between organisms and their environment.
Makes sense.
And finally, we zoom way out to the biggest picture, life's connection to the entire universe.
It really is a journey, covering these different scales, and it shows how fundamental laws, physics and biology, they're constantly shaping things in ways you might not expect.
Right.
These connections, they really make you pause and see the world a bit differently. It's kind of a shortcut to getting your head around some surprising science.
Okay, let's take that first step then. Life interacting with life.
Yeah.
Now, usually we think, okay, predator eats prey, food chains.
The standard stuff.
Yeah. But there's another really powerful dynamic. And to get it, we need to talk about a parasite. A common one, actually, called Toxoplasma gondii.
Ah, toxo.
Yeah, toxo for short. This tiny thing is going to seriously challenge how we think about relationships between living creatures.
It really does. Predation is key, sure, but parasitism.
Yeah.
It gives you this unique, sometimes kind of creepy look into evolutionary strategies. A parasite, like anything else alive, it's driven by that need to reproduce, to pass on its genes. And for Toxoplasma, the goal is super specific. It needs to get inside a cat's intestines. That's where it can properly complete its life cycle.
Okay, so it needs a cat. But how does a microscopic parasite pull that off? That sounds tricky.
Well, it often infects intermediate hosts first, like rodents. A rat might eat something contaminated with toxo eggs, maybe from cat droppings.
Got it. So the rat becomes a temporary home. But rats are naturally terrified of cats, for very good reason. How does the parasite bridge that gap, get the rat to the cat?
This is where it gets wild. Experiments show that infected rats, they change. They lose their fear of cat urine.
Seriously?
Yeah, instead of running away from the smell, they actually become weirdly attracted to it. They get curious, approach it.
Which makes them much easier targets for cats.
Exactly. They become fearless, you could say. It massively increases their odds of getting eaten. It's masterful manipulation for the parasite, a chillingly effective way to reach its final destination.
Wow. How does it even do that? How does it control the rat's behavior?
Well, this is where modern life science gives us the answer. It turns out Toxoplasma has actually picked up a gene from mammals.
A mammalian gene in a parasite.
Yep. And this gene allows it to produce an enzyme involved in making dopamine.
Dopamine, like the brain's reward chemical.
That's the one. It's crucial for reward, motivation, and importantly, how the brain assesses risk. So by messing with the dopamine levels in the rat's brain, Toxoplasma basically rewires the host. It makes the rat seek out the danger it should be avoiding. Fear turns into attraction. It's not just hanging out, it's actively pulling the strings.
That's unsettling. Okay, but what about humans? We can get Toxoplasma too, right? From undercooked meat or handling cat litter?
You can, yes. For most healthy people, it doesn't cause serious illness, though it can be risky during pregnancy.
But is there any behavioral effect? Like in the rats?
Well, that's the really interesting part. Research by Robert Sapolsky at Stanford, it showed something quite startling.
What's that?
Toxoplasma-infected humans are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in car accidents involving speeding.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Speeding?
Yeah. Increased risk-taking. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the same dopamine mechanism tweaking risk perception in rats might be subtly influencing us too.
So, this raises huge questions about free will, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We like to think of ourselves as, higher beings, fully in control, making rational choices.
Right. Masters of our fate.
But this toxo example, it shows that every living thing, down to a single-celled parasite, is a successful adapter in its own right. They evolve these incredibly clever, sometimes bizarre strategies to survive and reproduce. There isn't really a higher or lower in terms of evolutionary success, just different ways of winning the game.
So what does this mean for us, for you listening.
Yeah.
It forces you to kind of reconsider what free will even is. We think our personality, our choices are uniquely ours. But then you find out a microscopic organism might be nudging those choices, influencing our risk tolerance. Yeah. It's not just a biological curiosity. It makes you ask, where's the line between my conscious will and these hidden biological influences? It's kind of shocking, really. Suggests maybe we're not quite as independent as we thought. Okay, let's climb to the next step on our staircase. Now we're looking at the relationship between life and its environment.
The crucial link.
And our guy here is the humble bird beak.
Ah, the classic example.
You might think, a bird beak, how deep can that be? But they were huge for Darwin, comparing fincher beaks in the Galapagos. And later, the Grant couple, Peter and Rosemary Grant, did amazing long-term research there too. Scientists discussing this really highlight their work.
Oh, absolutely. The Grant's work over decades, it was one of the clearest real-time demonstrations of natural selection anyone had ever seen. They literally watched evolution happen.
Wow.
So imagine one of those Galapagos islands gets hit by a really bad drought.
Okay, tough times for the birds.
Right. But think about their food first, the plants. To survive the dryness, maybe the plants evolve seeds with harder, tougher shells, protects the seed's moisture.
Makes sense. So harder seeds.
Now back to the finches. If you had birds with different beak shapes to start with, well, after the drought, only the ones with really sharp, strong beaks could crack those tough seeds open.
The others would struggle to eat.
Exactly. They'd likely die off or fail to reproduce. So the population shifts. As the physicist Freeman Dyson put it, harsh environments tend to favor specialization. You get smaller populations adapted to very specific conditions.
Which sounds like a win, right?
Yeah.
Perfect adaptation. Evolutionary success.
On the surface, yes. But here's where it gets more nuanced, more interesting. There's a hidden cost to being too specialized.
Cost.
Yeah. Reduced evolvability. Think about it. If you're perfectly adapted for extreme drought, what happens if the climate flips? Say, years of heavy rain and floods.
Uh-oh. Your super strong seed-cracking beak might not be so useful then. Maybe it's even a disadvantage.
Precisely. You become less flexible, less able to cope with new changes. You've traded adaptability for perfection in one narrow scenario. It's a trade-off.
And this connects to Richard Dawkins, the science writer.
It does. He emphasized this really key idea. Organisms aren't just evolving traits. They're evolving their ability to evolve. Evolvability itself.
Okay, say more about that.
Sometimes, instead of pouring all resources into one super specialized, maybe costly adaptation, it's better in the long run to maintain some flexibility, to be able to adapt again when things inevitably change. It's like keeping some evolutionary options open.
So, going back to the Grants and their finches.
Yeah.
Did they see this play out, this evolvability?
They saw the whole cycle. It was fascinating. Yes, when conditions got tough, like the drought, different finch populations specialized, their beaks diverged, they became distinct.
As expected.
But, and this is the crucial part, when conditions improved, when rainfall returned and food sources diversified, those specialized groups started to interbreed again. They hybridized.
They mixed back together. Doesn't that seem like undoing the evolution? Going backwards?
It might look like regression, yeah. But actually, it's a brilliant strategy. This hybridization remixes the gene pool. It boosts genetic diversity and allows the population to adapt not just to one extreme, but to a wider range of changing conditions. It restores that flexibility, that evolvability.
So it's a dance. Specialize when you have to, but mix things up again when you can to stay resilient.
Exactly. It's not just about evolving, it's about evolving the capacity to keep evolving effectively. That's the deeper lesson from the beaks. It's a meta strategy for life, really building resilience for an unpredictable future.
Wow. Okay, so the simple bird beak teaches us about this complex dance between specializing for today and staying flexible for tomorrow. That concept of evolvability is really powerful. Right, final step. The top of the staircase. Life and the entire universe.
The grand scale.
We're going to tackle a big, kind of daunting idea, the heat death of the universe.
Always a cheerful topic.
Huh. Yeah. But why link life to the ultimate fate of the cosmos?
Yeah.
Well, because the same fundamental physical laws govern everything, from a cell to a star. Understanding those cosmic rules helps us understand the playground where life exists.
It's all connected. The heat death idea goes back to the 19th century physicist Rudolf Clausius,
Right.
1867, I think.
Right.
And it's rooted in thermodynamics, the science of heat and energy. Clausius summed it up with two famous laws. One, the total energy in the universe is constant.
Okay, energy is conserved.
And two, the entropy of the universe always tends towards a maximum. The second law, the law of increasing entropy, that's the one that leads to the heat death idea.
Entropy. Okay, that's a word we hear a lot. But what does it really mean, especially in this cosmic sense? Could you break that down?
Sure, it's basically a measure of disorder or randomness in a system. Think simple. Drop some ink into water.
Right, it spreads out.
It starts ordered, concentrated, then it disperses, becomes disordered, mixed up. That's increasing entropy. Or, your bedroom, leave it alone, it gets messy, right? Order tends to decay into disorder.
Unless you actively clean it, putting energy in.
Exactly. So the universe as a whole closed system is supposedly heading towards maximum disorder, maximum entropy, a state where everything is evenly spread out, uniform, lukewarm, dead.
But hang on, that seems like a huge problem for life.
It does.
Life is the opposite of disorder. It creates complex structures, maintains order, fights against decay. A cell, an organism, it's incredibly organized. So if the universe is inevitably sliding towards uniform disorder, how can life even exist? Shouldn't it be impossible in the long run? It feels like a paradox.
And it was seen as a paradox for a long time, a really fundamental one. If the universe is doomed to uniformity, how did complexity like us ever arise?
So what's the resolution? Is there one?
There is. And the key ingredient, the one often left out of the simple heat death picture, is gravity.
Gravity. How does that change things?
Massively. On the grand cosmic scale, gravity dominates. Think about it. Entropy pushes things to spread out evenly, like gas in a box. But gravity pulls things together. It causes matter to clump.
Like forming stars and galaxies instead of just having a uniform haze.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Gravity actively fights against that uniform spreading out. But wait, you might think, doesn't clumping decrease entropy locally? Doesn't that violate the second law?
Yeah, good question.
It doesn't, because of a really weird property of gravity systems called negative specific heat.
Negative specific heat. That sounds wrong. Heat usually makes things hotter.
I know, it's totally counterintuitive. For most things, like your coffee cup, add energy, temperature goes up. Lose energy, it cools down. Simple.
Right.
But for systems held together by gravity like a star, it's backwards. When a star loses, energy radiates heat and light out into space. Its core actually contracts under gravity, and this contraction makes it hotter.
Wait, losing energy makes it hotter. How?
Because as gravity pulls it tighter, the particles inside speed up, their kinetic energy increases, and that's what temperature measures. So the sun has actually gotten hotter and brighter over billions of years, even while burning fuel and radiating energy away. Gravity forces it to get hotter as it shrinks.
That is bizarre. So gravity prevents things from just cooling down evenly.
Exactly. The old heat death idea pictured a universe slowly fading into a uniform, lukewarm soup where nothing happens. Maximum entropy, equilibrium.
Yeah.
But because of gravity and its negative specific heat, the universe doesn't homogenize like that. Instead, gravity creates and amplifies differences. It leads to clumps of hot matter like stars, surrounded by cold, empty space. It drives things away from equilibrium.
And then non-equilibrium, those differences. That's where life can happen.
That's precisely it. Life needs energy flows, it needs gradients, differences in temperature and density. It thrives on complexity and disequilibrium. Gravity, by constantly stirring the pot, clumping matter, creating stars, provides the very conditions life needs to emerge and survive.
So, far from being doomed by entropy, the universe, thanks to gravity, actively fosters the complexity needed for life.
In a way, yes. It's a dynamic, evolving universe, not just fading away. Gravity ensures there's always structure, always gradients, always potential for interesting things like us to happen.
Wow. Okay, what a trip. We've gone from parasites messing with free will to bird beaks, evolvability, to gravity saving the universe from a boring death.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. So just to recap for everyone listening, first, Toxoplasma showed us these incredibly complex interactions between organisms, forcing us to question our own autonomy and the whole idea of a simple life hierarchy. Every creature's a strategist.
Then the bird beaks, especially the Grant's work, revealed evolvability, that crucial ability to adapt to change itself, not just to current conditions. Flexibility is key.
Right. And finally, rethinking the heat death. We saw how gravity's weird properties actually create the non-equilibrium, the differences, the clumping that allows stars, galaxies, and ultimately life to exist in this dynamic universe.
It paints a picture of life as deeply interwoven with everything, from the microscopic to the cosmic, driven by these fundamental, often surprising physical and biological rules.
Definitely. So maybe the thought to leave you with is this. Just consider how deeply interconnected everything is. Life isn't just happening on Earth. It's woven into the fabric of a dynamic, constantly changing cosmos. What other hidden connections, what subtle influences are shaping our world, maybe even shaping us in ways we haven't even begun to grasp yet?